my questions have been answered by yourself, Minister. I do want to express my condolences on the passing of your mum too. And I do welcome this bill, and I think what we're trying to achieve in it in terms of transparency and effectiven's are very welcome. And what we need to ensure is that there aren't any unintended consequences. So the more ambiguity we can remove from it, the better. And my main query and my main reason for being here today was around the thresholds, because I was very concerned about the 10K threshold. I really welcome the fact that you've moved that to 25. I still think there's a very big gap between the 25 and the 250, just in terms of inflation and activities of charities now and all that. I think it needs to be taken into consideration. That's head 14, section 50. So what we don't want, I'm finding in Mayo that so many volunteers are moving away from organisations. And we really need to achieve here that there's protection for the volunteers. Yes, there's accountability and absolutely transparency, but that we make it as unbureaucratic as we possibly can, because we're going to end up in a situation, I know, where there's even very, very long-standing events in Mayo that are cancelled this year, not because of COVID, but because of the fact that they can't get enough volunteers to be able to run the events. And the impact of that in rural Ireland is, well, I'm sure in urban as well, but in rural Ireland is quite severe. And also the fact that so much of the responsibility of things that should be done directly by the state under like the Section 39 groups and others is done in a capacity where you have registered charities carrying out this really essential work. And the impact of it not being carried out will have a really detrimental effect as well. But if you could look at the threshold, that would be really good. And when you say the charities appeal tribunal, that will be used more, maybe you could just talk to that in terms of what it will be used more for, in terms of protecting people, and just. We need to provide applicants and charities with greater independent legal recourse as well, if you could maybe just speak to that. So just those points. But I welcome your I welcome your responses to this and your willingness to be able to get it as right as possible and to work with everybody across the board so that we have a piece of legislation that serves the communities that these charities operate in, but also those who contribute to it. I do want to take up on the point that my colleague made in Paul Donnelly in terms of avoiding the fact where there is questions raised when they don't need to be, and the reputational damage that may do to charities in terms of fundraising and their standing, their good standing in communities. So thank you very much, Thank you,
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. So just on that middle category of 25,000 to 250k in terms of income, we estimate that includes about 2,500 charities actually. I'll take your point about the threshold. Your broader point about volunteers, I've got responsibility for volunteering policy as well, and I think when a lot of people think of volunteering, they think of the frontline volunteers and the visible volunteers, but I'm always at pains when I get the opportunity, and I'll take it now, to thank all the less visible volunteers on boards who don't get seen and the work doesn't get done. And we very much had them in mind, I suppose, in this as well, because it is, as Deputy Donnelly said, it's hard to get people to go on boards, it's hard to keep people on boards as well. And I think raising that threshold from 10k to 25k will help people more in terms of reducing the administrative burden. But I also think the clarification of trustee responsibilities as well will also help. I know of situations where people were reluctant to go on boards of charities because they didn't know really what it involved, and no one could tell them for certain in terms of the liability unless they were a legal expert. But here now we will have clarity on that in terms of what the responsibilities are. So I think that's a good thing. I suppose generally, in terms of the Charities Appeal Tribunal, I'll be shuffling around in bits of paper here now for 10 minutes to tell you the different places that the Charities Appeal Tribunal can be used more. But in essence, there are places and situations at the moment where the only option for a charity or the regulator is to go to court to appeal a decision or to appeal an action of one kind or another. We're just trying to reduce that down a little bit so that it's easier to appeal a decision. I don't have the list to hand to you there now. They're scattered throughout the heads of the bill. But we'll collate that, I think, just for our own information, just to make it clearer as well, and we can get back to you on that as well. I'm not sure. Was there? Did you?
It was only that. Obviously, the third level one as well is of interest to me, and what you're doing there, and in fitting in with the HCA bill that
so
we recently were doing, trying to get the balance there again between autonomy and accountability. Yeah.
So the foundations will be, well, in accordance with the categorisation of reporting that we have, and I would guess that most of them will hit the top one, that they'll be required to submit fairly detailed accounts to the charities regulator on an annual basis now. And that's good in terms of oversight and transparency. It hadn't been there before.
Thank you.